COVID's had people drawing all sorts of conclusions about what a sort of society we've become. Frankly, I think there's a lot of nonsense out there, particularly in my own country, where you've had everything from state governments that have handled it well through to state governments that have handled it terribly. But I'm not sure in the end the Australian people haven't found the people. I think they got there ahead of the politicians to a sensible balance. And I think the same in Britain, actually. You got there. It was messy, it was untidy. Maybe it was like Bismarck's sausage making. You know, you don't want to see it, and it wasn't a good thing to go through. But
I'd quibble with that somewhat.
Where are we now?
I'd quibble with that somewhat, John. I think we went way too far in this country.
Right.
We went way too far. And I'm not talking about the medical side.
You've written about this, haven't you? Something you said went viral.
Yes. I wrote a long Twitter thread, which became an article, which became a video on our YouTube channel, which explained why people are hesitant about taking the vaccine. And my critique there was mainly about how we've been misled by the media for so long. It's understandable that some people are hesitant about the messaging they're hearing. And I think that's a legitimate point, but I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is we had, in this country, a genuine conversation about forcing people, individual free citizens, to inject something into their body because the government's decided that this is what they must do. That is a line that is, in my opinion, way too far. I don't agree with the government being able to force you to inject something into your body.
I agree with that.
Right?
Yep.
And we had that.
Freedom of conscience is critical in the end.
You've got to be able to decide what goes in and out of your body. That's why I am in favor of, I know we probably disagree on this, but decriminalizing certain types of drugs, because I think that is your freedom to do that, even if it's to your detriment. We are free citizens, and we're free to make decisions for ourselves, even if they have negative consequences for us. And I felt that pushing that line was inappropriate and it was wrong. And I was out in Parliament Square with a tiny number of people who felt the same as I did. Not because I was some wacko who thought the vaccines are, some globalist conspiracy to whatever the nonsense was that was being spread around. I felt the lines about our freedoms and our rights as individuals were being crossed. And the reason I love the West, which is why I've written the book, is I think this is one of the few societies that respects your right as an individual to make your own choices. So I think we went too far. Now, did we row back from that eventually? Thankfully, yes, we did. But I thought that the amount of protesting and screaming and shouting and writing to members of parliament, people watch our show, politicians, whatever, having to contact them and go, hey, what the hell are you doing? I've had these conversations with ministers in the government. What the hell are you doing? Who do you think you are? Why do you think you have the right to tell a person in this country, you must take this injection, which carries risks? They're tiny risks, but they exist. And if you're a healthy young person, you should be free to make that decision for yourself. I don't see any reason that the government should be pursuing that sort of strategy, discriminating against people for not choosing what the government would like them to do. So I think we went too far. And I think there are many countries like Austria and Germany that locked unvaccinated people in their homes that went way too far.
Yeah, I should backtrack a bit. There was quite a bit of that, particularly in some states in Australia.
Yes.
And it's had international attention.
Yes.
I happen to come from a state where I think it was better handled than Australia. We were like America, we're a federation. But I think my real point, the reason that I sounded as I did, is that I actually think in my own country, the people got there before the politicians. I think you're saying the same thing. They shouldn't have had to make so much noise. But my impression is the people got there before the politicians said, this is ridiculous.
I don't know that's true here either.
We're not going to live like this.
It would be the right thing for me to say in order to be liked by the largest number of people watching this. But actually, I don't think that's true either. The opinion polls that we saw in this country, the people, there was 20% of the public at one point wanted all nightclubs permanently shut down.
Right.
Forever, irrespective of COVID. There was a significant proportion of people in this country who wanted everyone to be forced to wear a mask forever, irrespective of COVID. I think a lot of people lost the plot over COVID, and I don't blame them. They were locked in their home for 2 years. They were told there was a terrifying disease and people were dying, and it was understandable. But I think we panicked, John. I think we panicked as people. I think we panicked as a society. I think our governments panicked and overreacted and did some things they never should have done. And I hope that we have the right lockdown inquiries to look at the scientific evidence and we draw our conclusions from that. I don't think we should ever again be in this position. Now, look, if this was Ebola that was spreading like COVID, we'd probably have a different conversation. But I just thought that we reacted in a way that was disproportionate, people and government. And I hope that we've learned some lessons from that. I really, really do. Because to me, I think it's a very real threat that in order to buy more safety, we give away more and more of our freedoms. And that is not a trade-off that we should be making in the West, because the West is built on very different principles.
Okay. I think that's a really valuable set of insights. And I guess I plead my position only on the basis that I think in the end in my country, the bulk of people got there before all the politicians.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I don't know anything about what happened in Australia.
I may be wrong. Yeah. I have a great interest in history, and often it's not until you can look back over several years. Because the test is, will we allow something like this to happen again?
Quite.
Next time round, will we be more measured and more sensible? And the thing that does anger me about the debate in Australia was the way in which most of the media, which is left of centre, refused to talk about the costs of what we were doing, mental health, young people, and frankly, economic. And
physical health too. You've got to remember there were people who were
there wasn't a balance.
No. And that's because we overreacted and panicked, as I said, which you can understand when people are scared, things are difficult, people will panic. But I think we've got to make sure that we are more sensible next time, as people and as governments.